Well, this is really a treat. The way this happened was Richard and Laura called up about maybe 4 or 5 months ago and said they were opening up a larger headquarters in San Francisco that was going to have a bit of a showroom, and could they borrow some art? And what I say, as I've said to every museum director and curator, whatever you want. And they then had the wonderful opportunity, or the difficulty of going through thousands of things, and decided upon this theme, which I think was incredible. I live with art in my house and houses like all of you do. The rest of the work is always in the warehouse. So as excited as you may be to have seen this work, no one was more excited than me, because while some of these things had been in other exhibitions, like the Cole Scotts and some of the McLean Thomases and some of Alison's work, and also Mildred's too, some of this had never been shown out of the collection, and it was wonderful, and really a tip of the hat to how you curated it and how you arranged it in this space. So we all wish you much success in your space here, and Christie does a great job outreach, and thank you for all you do. Now these two ladies, most of you know their histories and background, and so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's fascinating the similarities they both have. Mildred was born in Oakland.
San Francisco.
San Francisco in 1945, and then grew up in Berkeley. And we were just talking about the fact that my father had bought the Claremont Hotel in 1954. It was leased out until around 70 or 71 when the operator got in trouble, and I was sent down that summer to work with some other people there, and that was a few years after People's Park. But that street scene, we were commiserating with Coe's and Shakespeare and Company and Moe's, and it was an amazing time and place. And again, there was a video about you that focused a lot on your mother Mabel at the Fog exhibition. I don't know how many of you saw that, but if you hadn't, it is really a treat. It opened my eyes. And therefore, you grew up with a very strong mother that was a strong social activist and helped make a lot of change. At the same time, Alison here was born in 1956 in Los Angeles and grew up in Laurel Canyon, which at that time was really pretty rural, coyotes and all sorts of things. And mother was an artist, Betty Saar, spectacular, fabulous artist. And those exhibitions I've seen at MoMA and at LACMA, amazing the way she created things at her time and place, and still is. And father, Richard, was a conservator and a painter, and so she grew up in a very rich environment too. So the first question I wanted to ask, because of that similarity, is how do you each think having those strong parental and especially mother roles in your life, how did it shape and form you? Start, Mildred? Tell us about that.
I didn't think I would be if there was really no difference. I mean, it was expected of us to give back to the community, to be very productive in what we did. And she would always say, do it right or don't do it at all. So it was really simple. It wasn't something like, oh, I'm going to go out to do this, and or I'm going to go out to do that. It was like, when you do something, do it with a purpose.
Alison?
Gosh, I mean, I think part of, having parents that are just really strong and kind of, have their feet really firmly on the ground is that, often we would have to fend for ourselves. I don't know how, they're not just out there making cookies for you. You had to really, deal with it on your own. I mean, to the same effect, do it or don't do it. But, just this idea that, find your place and proceed with that. And so I feel like, having parents that were both creative and socially sort of activists and things like that just really helped form us, sort of thing. And I think women specifically. And I think you look at your work and my work as well, that we definitely, kind of like owe a great deal to the powerful females in our lives. So. And I met Betty first.
Way back I met Betty first. I met Betty first, and I think what happened is that I was at the National Conference of Artists in Atlanta. And that's when I was doing these chocolate boxes with the chocolate boxes with the little bonbons, and there were they were fabric covered chocolate boxes, and I would have these black folks on the cover, and each bonbon was a black person, either a stereotypical one mixed in with family members and other people I knew. And Betty bought that piece, and we became friends after that. And then I met you, Alison, and then, I mean, it was just like a natural mix. We all became really close. In fact, I talked to Betty, a couple of times a month or more.
It's a really close friend, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if she doesn't answer her phone, she calls me and says, "Where's your mother?"
Yes, right.
So go back in time a little bit. You got your undergraduate degree at the College of Alameda, and you were a dancer. Mm-hmm. And so did that come when you were in grade school or high school? I mean, did you want to dance? What were your dreams and goals when you were young?
I started off as a dancer, but what's interesting about my growing up in Berkeley during that time is that just a few doors from my house was the South Berkeley Congregational Church. And at the time, I thought every church was like mine. People would, first of all, it was like multiracial. They had ballet classes, arts and crafts classes. And I was 3 when my family, or 2.5 when my family moved from San Francisco to Berkeley. And so I could just, at that time, you could just wander up and down the street and not worry about somebody snatching you. So I started going over there and taking classes when I was very young. And I was always curious about almost everything that I touched, especially since my family, my parents were antique dealers and union activists. So there was always stuff for me to use. That's how I got started, and I did. I studied there. I studied dancing for 25 years, and that's why I can go from doing pieces like this to large rooms, because it's all the same.
You've talked about how you were very influenced by Marian Anderson, Gellington, a lot of the music performers and theatrical people.
Leontine Price. I saw Leontine Price just walk next door to my house, and she sang there. I saw Duke Ellington at the same church. So that was very much a part of growing up. And then hearing stories from my family talking about, oh, I know, you mean Du Bois? Meaning W. Du Bois. I used to dance with him, and that was stories that my mother I heard growing up.
So you were dancing then?
And I was still making art. I was dancing, I was making art. And then in the late 60s, I decided to put some work up in a street fair. And then I was amazed that people were interested. And then, the 60s hit. I was doing things and making clothes for, musicians and things like that. And participating in the marches and leafleting in the neighborhood and all those things that other people did, got married, got divorced, had kids, and then decided, well, I should go back to school and just follow my way of thinking. And by the time I applied to graduate school, I had a degree in pattern making and design. I decided, maybe there's something behind this. And that's how I got started.
There was a quote in one of the books about you that you'd said, "I'm a black woman living in the United States of America and in the world. Okay. I'm no more special than those who are living outside my studio, who I see walking down the streets all day long, people that look like me, that don't have a job, living on the street." Living in Berkeley, working in the Bay Area during that time, the activism as a young black woman with all that was going on, because I want to get to your art now, but how did that all shape and form you, your ideas? I can't tell if there was rage in you. I mean, how did you feel emotionally about the world around you?
Well, I said earlier, I was always, I know you're probably that way too, curious about things and always questioning why things were the way they are. And really, those people aren't any different. I mean, they're human. They're people that just one little thing. I mean, racism is a bitch. It really is. But at the same time, I'm part of that. I'm part of that whole experience. Even though I'm not on the street, it's there. And as an artist, my way of talking about what I see is through my work. I've often said that the art is one of the last frontiers where one can have freedom of speech. And we're losing it. I mean, look at what's happening with all the books being thrown away. Can you imagine? I mean, why would you want to throw away Song of Solomon? Or any of those books? Why? You don't want it, don't read it. You don't want to marry the same sex, then don't. What's that got to do with you? You know, it's like people need to stay in their own lane. It's crazy.
Alison, let's talk about that environment of your growing up where, as you said and it's been said, your mother was an amazing artist, an assembler, a creative person, collages, you name it, finding things all the time. And it was said that you kids were encouraged to go find things and bring them home. So you...
well, I don't know if she encouraged us so much, there was no stopping us, but it's a real contrast to yours because, you know, I think, you know, my mother was, you know, in the 50s and 60s, she was a witch. So, like, we didn't go to church, we didn't have that. I kind of miss it. I kind of feel bad that we didn't have access to that because it's such a rich history.
Well, mine wasn't really a church.
Okay.
It was a church, but it wasn't a traditional church. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the Panthers spoke there later. It was that kind of place, and they were,
You're right. But so we just, you know, and we were, you know, I walked outside, and again, we were like in the woods or coyotes and all that stuff. So it was and I think, you know, when you're talking about homelessness, and that was just something when I moved to New York, that was just like all of a sudden. I mean, I was aware of it and everything, but it was never outside my front door. And so that was a real sobering moment when I moved to New York in the 80s when they had shut down most of the mental health institutions, and it was just heartbreaking. And like you say, all it needs is one piece, one thread to be pulled out of that fabric, and it all unravels. And so, you know, it taught me a lot. And you know, there were days where we were kind of close on the verge of losing our apartment, and so it's true. You have to really understand that it's, you know, you can be in those shoes. So you have to like be responsible and be generous when you can.
and compassionate.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you ever think about doing anything other than being an artist?
Oh yeah, I didn't want to be an artist because my mother was an artist, and you don't want to be what your mother is, right?
There's the best picture of her. How old were you underneath the printing press when she was teaching at Otis or CalArts?
She was actually at Long Beach. She wasn't teaching. She was a student. Yeah, she was
that's it. Okay.
Getting her MFA when I was born. And so, we got dragged to the studios when, you know, babysitters weren't available. And
so here she is, 3 or 4 years old, under a printing press, okay? So you talk about the prints we'll talk about in a second.
But you know how smells take you back to someplace, and the smell of asphaltum just, you know, takes me back to my early childhood.
And you went to Scripps.
Went to Scripps, went to Claremont Colleges, yeah.
And Samela Lewis, who's a historian and artist, was teaching there at the time.
She was, and she basically somehow, like, you know, opened the door for me because I was not thinking about college, and, you know, I think it was more a response to she worked with my father doing, you know, when she had pieces that need conservation, she went with him. So, you know, it was really for my dad more than for my mom that got me into that school, and just an amazing mentor, and just so thrilled that she is now making her art,
making her
She's
own work,
done for so long, for so long,
right?
Really, just be able to focus on her work now, it's really incredible. But
so let's talk about some of that work the prints that you've got here. And we do have, in addition to having all of Alison's prints in multiples, we've got, I don't know, 12, 15 major sculptures. And we've had a national tour of her work. And before you all leave, you do get 3 books, one on Alison and one that Mildred Howard is in. But this is the book on Alison we published. And Mildred's in, well, they're both in this other one too you get. And then there's a book called Themes of Social Justice in Contemporary Printmaking. And so all 3 of those you can get with you before you leave. But so we've had that, we've talked before at a bunch of museums, and it's been a fabulous exhibition. But let's talk about some of the work that's here. And first, since you work in so many mediums, and we'll talk about the found objects in a second, but let's talk about these. And what inspired you? Tell us about this work. And what's this one called?
Kiss on a Rope.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't
Kiss
know
on
if
Rope.
any of you know what soap on a rope is, right?
Yeah.
Those few of us. What an insane idea. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting because I think a lot of people kind of recoil at these kind of like 2 sort of free-floating decapitated heads strung together on a rope. But to me, it's like that moment of passion where you're with someone and the rest of the world falls away and you're just like bound to them. It's like stuck to glue. So while it seems very violent, it's a good violence. It's a loving violence sort of thing. It's about passion, I think, really, yeah. And so it's just a woodcut. You know, I got into doing woodcuts because my father had given me a set of wood carving tools when I think I graduated from Otis, or just before I graduated from Otis. And so I had the tools, and so it was just kind of like a really easy way. And when you don't have a press, it's the one printmaking process you can do at home. And because when my mother was a printmaker, she had a press and she had acid baths in the kitchen and all of that. But I just decided just to do what I could and just carved it on backs of boards that I'd find in the street and sort of things like that. Yeah.
So the question that everyone wants to know is, so where do these ideas come from? Do you
where do the
do you
ideas
think of
come
them
from?
first and write them down? Do you make little sketches? Boy, Ellsworth Kelly, I remember visiting him. He would have these notebooks, everything mathematically, all laid out. I mean, all worked out before he'd start doing the work. So first, where do these ideas come from? They
come from the ether. I mean, I don't know. Music, I think, brings a lot of it to me. I mean, I think we share that sort of love for music and just, lyrics. I think maybe even more so than the lyrics of music is the kind of space that music puts you into. Like I go to concerts and I'm like halfway through, I'm rummaging through my purse to find a piece of paper and a pencil,
to write something,
and pissing everyone else off around me. But yeah, it's just, I think for some reason, kind of that space that music allows you to go to allows kind of all these other opens all these doors to the imagination. And so for me, that's where a lot of that comes from, this sort of, I wouldn't say it's a hypnotic stage or phase, but a lot of it comes from news. How about yourself?
Yeah, a lot of mine comes from music. It comes at odd times. Sometimes I'll dream something and wake up and write it down so that I won't forget. Or I can be driving and all of a sudden I'll see these rolling hills and that change colors during the season, the rolling hills that look like lovers. Or I might be reading something and or hearing someone talk about something that's of interest to me. And
I'm jealous that you can dream your art, because I
I
wake
can
up
dream it
and read my notes and I'm like, oh my God, that idea is terrible.
Well, sometimes that happens to me also, but I'm also looking at different kinds of materials, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I can use this. Or sometimes I'll buy stuff and have it for years. Are any of the the millennials here? No, they're not here.
No, we have those, but
Yeah, I mean, I had some of those materials for 40 years before I used it.
Well, as long as you're talking right now, let's look right behind us here. And this was the theme here of Witness to This Game. Do you want to first talk about that,
Yeah,
that theme and how you came up with it?
I can't remember how you have all of them?
Yeah, yes.
I did about, what, 10 maybe?
Yes, I think
All of them
there was
aren't
one we
here.
didn't have and we just got it.
Maybe I did
Right.
10.
Yes.
And the reason why I did that is because oftentimes we're looking around trying to see who is the prize or who, and I did that bingo series because all the women I know are doing something incredible. Incredible. And I wanted to showcase who they are. Who are these women? Look, I mean, that's the real bingo. If you get one of these, you're doing okay. So yeah.
And so who is this?
Well,
'Cause
that's that's Tamisa.
Oh my God! Oh my
Yeah.
God! Seriously.
Yeah.
Photographer.
I mean, you have three of my daughter. And then Hung Lu.
And then Hung Lu.
And I did that. I went over and photographed Hung Lu in her studio. And I said, hold, because she loved hourglasses. And I had been talking with her about building an hourglass at one time for an installation that I wanted to do. But I wanted the hourglass to be like 10 feet high.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that you had to crank to turn. And so we were talking about it, and she was saying you should go to China and have it built. Yeah, but my daughter she has 2 kids, and she went back to school to be a carpenter and a contractor. Now, she's 5'4", and 90 pounds? But she's a whip. And so, I mean, right there, that's something unusual. And then, of course, you all know Hung Lu. I mean, she has such an incredible story to have been, in prison, working in the fields, come to the United States, and to do the memory and everything that she left us. And then Nashime Lindo she's here. She's one of the bingo. I mean, she's done incredible things. From moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, an artist, and then gonna be chair of the California Arts Council. I mean, every woman I know is doing something.
But so tell me, because I often think, because I love both your works and all the other artists too, and I think what's wonderful is what I talk about these shows. We've had 140 exhibitions of much bigger exhibitions. We have 20 this year alone. And what I tell people, 2 things. One is often some people come up and say, this abstract art of whatever, bitch about it. And I'll say, just stop thinking. Just start looking at work and feel it. Just feel it. And it'll start speaking to you. And I think one thing that's wonderful is that, as you say, it's the last bastion where we can all think and feel and express whatever we want without being told by Twitter and Facebook and everything else that, being channeled into one thought, one dream. But I must admit, sometimes all of us who are lucky enough to experience your work and others may read into it an awful lot more than you may have been thinking.
Well, that's
but
what it's supposed
on these, did you actually see some bingo cards and it went off? Or did you think of the idea, hey, it's a bingo, and then look for bingo? How did the bingo card get to be in those works?
Well, I like the pattern of the bingo card first. And that's what interests me, the bingo card. And then I was at some book fair, and they had all these antebellum-like dresses.
Got it.
And I'm thinking, it's another side to that story. It's a whole nother side to that story. And I was at Sharks Inc., and you've gone to Sharks Inc. too, Sharks Inc. in Colorado. And usually when I go, Bud always says, well, why don't you come? And I'm thinking, but I can't think of anything right now. He said, oh yeah, you'll think of something. And so I go with boxes and boxes of material that I've collected over time. And next thing you know, I've done 40 of the Casanova series, or I can't even remember the name of that series, because this is just the 3rd time I've seen these. I did them, and Jordan snatched them up.
Where's your purse? Where's your purse?
And then that was it. Yeah. Those pieces, I've always felt as though, yes, I'm from the United States, but I'm really a citizen of the world. Because the United States, yes, we are separated by bodies of water. But, these artificial borders that are up, they're really artificial. And so I did that to talk about those kinds of things.
Alison, tell me, let's move over to the wonderful series you did on the linen handkerchiefs. And when I first saw those at Tandem Press, I just fell in love with them all. She's mentioned Bud Shark at Shark's Inc. One of the reasons I love Works on Paper is the collaboration with the amazing publishers. And Valerie Wade's here, and Catherine Brown, who manages Crown Point Press, and Catherine Brown I just put on a pedestal, as I do all of the publishers across the country. And so Paula Pachenko at Tandem Press at University of Wisconsin-Madison just is an incredible human being and does spectacular work. Any of you sometime make an effort to go to the publishers when they're printing stuff. It's such a wonderful, magical journey. But so tell us about where those ideas came from. Did you collect a bunch of handkerchiefs and then say, what should I do with them? Or did you suddenly think, hey, I want to do images on handkerchiefs? Where do those ideas come from?
Well, full disclosure, my mother did a series on handkerchiefs.
Right.
Okay.
But, I think, growing up, my job was to iron my father's handkerchiefs. And and men still used handkerchiefs, right? And so I think that really, that just really meant something to me, that it was something that was somehow dapper and formal. And then I started thinking about kind of class and what kind of hankies, who had what kind of hankies. And so I was looking at, they're all the different kinds of blues: indigo blues, high yeller blues, red bone blues, and we're missing coal black blues, right? Coal black blues. But, this idea that, if you're fair skinned like myself, being perceived as white and having the opportunity to pass, that you had different options and different opportunities. And so, she has this very beautiful hand-tatted handkerchief, which is just, some of these handkerchiefs are so extraordinary, I didn't even want to give them up. They're really beautiful. And then, her dark-skinned sister basically is on a cotton sack, a sugar sack made out of cotton, and I hand hemmed all of them, and I hand dyed them in indigo. And and so this is a woman that has to make do with what she can get her hands on, because nothing's going to be given to her on a silver, bronze, or pewter platter. She's got to make do. And the same with the red bone, being fair-skinned. He's got this kind of fancy men's handkerchief, and coal black blues is on a shop rag. So
Did you ever go to the indigo plantation in Charleston?
No.
Indigo was brought here by slaves.
I know.
Yeah, I went there. When I saw Sea Island, that's what I thought about.
Oh, yeah. Indigo's crazy, because, you're working in indigo and you end up blue.
Right. And the interesting thing about indigo is you have to bring it out to oxidize.
It's
and up and down, up and down. So when you see something that's really, really dark blue,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
But it comes in, it's like this beautiful pale green, and you pick it up, and then when the air gets to it, it changes color in front of your eyes.
It's like magic.
It is pretty incredible. So,
I've asked you before about, with all of your sculptures and all of your work, the eyes. And if you notice her work, you never see eyes. Why is that?
What's up?
Why is that?
I think it comes out of a lot of things. I mean, in some ways, my father had given me a book on Roman bronzes, and of course all of their eyes had fallen out. And so I was really fascinated by these faces with no eyes and this vacancy. And then part of it is looking at sort of, masks, and how a mask allows you to be something else allows you to hide or sort of sequester your feelings, kind of remove your. And I think, a lot of them, when I was doing these pieces, I mean, there were women that were being observed. I think of, Sajid Bartman and the torments that she was being put through in terms of a Hottentot Venus, for those who don't know who she is, and, paraded, and how did this woman maintain any sort of dignity, and that she, would kind of almost have to put on this mask, and that, you could see me, but you can't own me. And so in some ways it's a means of removing yourself from being observed and scrutinized and all of those things. It's a way of being able to step back and maintain some sort of dignity. So that's how I see it.
You know what I see is like when someone says something, you go, rolling your eyes.
It could be that too. It could be that like, oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then again, that comes back to this point that everybody sees something,
and that's the great thing about art.
Well, I learn more about my art from other people.
Exactly.
Than,
So do I. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's powerful that it can answer questions that we don't even know, right?
In the smaller work there, and I wish we had some of your amazing sculptures here with the cotton balls.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know if those are cotton balls or the things.
Those are cotton balls, yeah.
So tell us about. Well, we've got you've a lot of work that you have cotton balls and cotton coming out of people's mouths and.
On their hair.
Hair, right. So why is that? What is it?
What is cotton? I mean, was my fascination with cotton? I'm fascinated with all the kind of slave crops in that, the slaves were brought here because they had an expertise in all of those things. They were rice growers in Africa. They were cotton growers in Africa. They're indigo growers in Africa, and they were brought here because they knew what they were doing. They're experts, and and I think the thought of cotton as being this sort of pure white sort of thing, and all that goes into that. I mean, it's a really really rough thing to harvest and to grow, and it basically leaches the ground dry. It's just like this hungry ghost sort of thing, and so. I'm really intrigued with that thing in particular, and how the pain that it caused so many people in terms of bringing Africans here, but then it became a staple for African farmers too. I mean, African American black farmers sort of thing as well. So I'm really intrigued with that, and that piece in particular is a broadside with the poet Evie Shockley, who I'm really interested in working with writers and poets these days, and so that's an example of a collaboration.
Mildred, when I asked you what would you like me to ask you, you said bring up In the Line of Fire.
Yeah, In the Line of Fire is a piece that I did in, I think it was maybe it was the late 90s or early 2000s. And it's a repetition of a World War I soldier printed on plywood, and then the figures are cut out. And you walk through this regimen. I think I have 52, 53. You walk through, and as you walk through, you're looking at the face of this man. It's the same. And then when you turn around, there's a target. And when you get to the opposite end, I have this pile of, have you seen that piece? A pile of boulders. So the boulders are a metaphor for, maybe a weapon or for strength. And it had been in storage for a while, and it was shown in New York at City Gallery. And it was shown at the beginning of COVID when that other man was running the country and all the cockroaches got out. And so on the front, you couldn't go into the gallery, but you could see it from the street. And all these racial slurs were written across the glass. Mm. And I'm thinking, I got him. Mm. And if that had been shown 25 years ago, I may have been more upset, or when I first did it. But this time, I was I got them. It got underneath their skin. So that's what I wanted. Yeah, it got under their skin. So yeah, it's all good.
He who laughs
You,
last.
Yes.
I understand you're working with some NFT, experimenting
Yes.
with that.
Yes.
Yeah, here it comes up. First time in public it's announced. Okay. She sold that piece last week for $67 million, and she's paying for dinner.
Yeah, my first NFTs were launched. When was it? Monday?
Oh, congratulations.
Monday. Thank you. Yes. In 2014, when I was had to move from my studio. Hi, Travis. Another great artist. It's great to see all the artists here and friends. I decided to do a whole thing on, and it was at the same time that Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and all that stuff was happening. And so I brought together a group of young African-American young men and one girl who said, "I'm coming," to talk about issues of the day. And I wanted them to come. Your parents don't have to come, but then their parents came. But I wanted them to be able to talk about what is life like for you now, and feel free to speak on anything they wanted to do. And at the same time, I was also photographing homeless, and everybody got paid because I took the money that I received for this fellowship and I paid all the young kids. I paid all the homeless people I worked with, and all the kids got a print. And it was some of the things one kid said, the young woman said, I've always thought I was powerful because no one ever told me otherwise. And I'm thinking, this is just, I have to, and then another quote was, let me see if I can remember, one that talked about, I have to do what I need to do before I do what I want to do.
Wow.
So, I mean, every single quote was incredible. And out of that came an artist book. I did 5 of them. And originally, I was going to have them printed and go up and down through 3 cities. And I had all of them in the shadow, because with their quotes underneath them, because I didn't want them to be targets. So I put them all in the shadow. And now they've turned into NFTs. So they're still in the shadow, except maybe their hat will be a color, or the soles of their shoes will be a color, or their t-shirt will be a color. I mean, your shadow is always with you, whether you see it or not. And in terms of young black men, they're always there, and they're not going anywhere. And what I like about this new generation is that they see the world differently. And those who are thinking otherwise, it's a losing battle. Because they're, all these people who have these racist ideas, they're going to be gone. And these young people are going to take over. And I'm excited about it. I just hope I'm around to see it happen. Yeah. And then one other thing, while I was doing that, I was also working with the homeless, because I'm thinking, now, I could be right there with them. And they had such interesting stories. So I said, I'm gonna pay you if you let me photograph you. But I photographed these homeless people, and since everything of mine was practically in storage, then I loaded it onto my computer and manipulated them, and that became a whole nother series of work that I did. But I didn't go out to say, oh, this is social justice. I just went out to do some work, and it led to that. Because why would I want to take a job from someone who's trained to be a sociologist and a psychologist? even though I work in those areas. I don't want that job. I got enough. It's enough being an artist. Yeah.
Maybe take a break and maybe see if anybody has any questions.
I'm good with that.
Sure.
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to reiterate when we're talking about this group of young men, because I was there that night when they all kind of opened up and talked, and then she gave them all a work of art. She gave them complete prints with white gloves so that they would know it was precious. And now they're talking about buying art.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that, because
That's awesome.
it made a difference.
That's very
Some other questions? Let me hit you with.
Oh, you have to call Carol Turner Gallery. It's at the Crypt. Yeah, the Crypt. Yeah, they just put up, I think 2 are up now. Yeah, it's DYCRPT. Decrypt. Yes. Yeah. I mean, people who may not be able to make it to a place like this, I mean, they go all over the world. That's what I liked about it. All over the world.
Well, it's great for all sorts of artists.
Yes.
Just copyright, doesn't have the same value even in some ways, like photography.
Yeah, but you always own the copyright.
That's right, but it's the NFTs really
Exactly. It goes to everyone.
Another question? I've got 1 or 2 last ones for you. I did want to ask one thing. You both are extraordinary in that you work in many different mediums. And the sculptures you've done in public places, in Oakland, other places, in Washington, D.C., and all over, you suddenly wake up thinking, boy, I want to do Sculptures Day. Gee, I want to do Prince Day. How do you traverse going from one medium to another, and what inspires you to suddenly do one medium versus another? Alison?
I mean, I think I'm like you. We just find stuff, and it sometimes sits there in the studio forever, and so you just got to wait for it to kind of reveal to you why it's there and why you picked it up, sort of thing. So, I think a lot of times the materials really dictate what you need to do. Sometimes when I'm tired, I don't want to carve anymore. I don't want to lift the chainsaw, and I don't want to be, hammering away. And then that's when I start looking at prints or drawings or paintings. So sometimes I'm just fatigued. But how about yourself?
Mildred?
Almost the same. Also, with a lot of the big public pieces, you have to talk with the community and go out and engage with them in some kind of way. And so sometimes my ideas come from that. Oftentimes it comes from the place itself and the history behind that place. And what is it about this place, and how can you articulate some of your ideas along with what this place represents? I mean, it's to me, it's all the same. It's just making stuff. I know, Alison, there's a piece of yours that I still think about. It's a woman, and she had dreadlocks, and the dreadlocks, remember where you had the ball of dreadlocks, and they,
Oh,
and
right,
I imagine that, oh God, I love that piece.
Right, cachet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
You know,
we just come this way. I mean, we each have our own way of thinking about the world, but this is the way I came.
Yeah, I mean, you asked initially when we started the conversation, did I always want to be an artist? And the truth was that I didn't. My mother was an artist. She was getting a lot of attention. I wanted to not be my, mother's, child sort of thing. Not that I didn't want to be her child, but I just wanted to follow in her footsteps. But I was really not really good at doing anything else, to be honest with you. And it was just, our first language was this visual language, and it's just kind of what we're comfortable, and it's kind of how we speak and how we communicate. So I never felt I really had much option.
So let me finish with this question. Let me set up the question with this story. about Robert Colescott over here. And again, Alex Colescott is here. When my mother opened the Fountain Gallery of Art in 1961 in Portland, an artist, Carl Morris, said, you need to go down to Salem, Oregon to see this artist, Bob Colescott, that just took a job at Portland State University teaching. She goes down to the Bush Bar and sees his work, goes to Portland State, finds his office, goes in and says, gee, are you Robert Colescott? He says, yes. He says, I'm starting Schnitzer. I just opened this contemporary art gallery and I'd like to have you in my gallery. He says, have you seen my work? And she said, yes, I went down to Salem to see his work. And your dad lived in Portland. You guys, how long did he live in, how long was your dad in Portland? 7 years, 10 years?
No, more like, I was 6 when we moved there.
So for,
he was about 8, 9 years, I guess.
So 8, 9 years, Robert Colescott lived in Portland, and I used to go play at the house and whatever. And as you know, the story that the work that he did initially was very landscapes and tables and chairs and nice scenes and so forth. To speed this up, he then gets a Fulbright to go to Egypt to teach with his then second wife, who was a potter, and Nasser takes over the Suez Canal, not a good place for Americans to be. They go to Paris. She had to leave her kiln there and everything. They just took a bag of clothes and left. Basically, during that time, this is 1969, he comes to the faces a reality about himself. As he told us the story, and if I screw it up, you can tell it better, whatever, but as he told us, he said, growing up in Oakland, his father was quite a talented musician, but didn't work as a musician and worked in the Union Pacific as a porter. Mother was a teacher. That when the boys, when Robert was about 9 and Warrington was about 7, she told them, because you used this word earlier, she told them, she said, you are light enough skinned, you can pass. And it is difficult to be a black man in America. And this is your mother telling you this, and don't you ever look back and question this.
True.
Okay, do you understand? Okay. So here he is in Paris during that same time, and he comes to grips with his African black heritage, and suddenly, in essence, comes out and starts doing work that we're more familiar with. The first series of about 70 or 90 paintings are taking work like, we have a number of them, like Delacroix, give me liberty or give me death, and he would change the faces from the white faces to the black faces and so forth, and we're honored to have a lot of his work. In the meantime, Warrington, who was teaching at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, was quite upset because his brother sort of blew his
cover.
He blew
and it's
it.
interesting, when I went to see Warrington once, because he died after your dad, but my mother said, don't you dare ask that question. Of course I did, but he had a different answer than that. So tell me, with the lives you've lived as women and African black heritage, the 40 and 50 years you've been artists, okay? Have we made progress? What are some of the challenges you've faced, and are those challenges still there to the same degree?
I definitely think we made some progress. We're being seen, which is progress, right? I mean, I think, the work is out there. People are seeing it. People are buying it. People are buying it like crazy, which I'm always suspect. Sorry, Jordan. It's like, what are they up to? But, I think we've seen these waves before. My mother had, in 1970s, had her, first New York show at the Whitney. And, it was just like, oh, great, we can walk out on the streets now. And then, then there was kind of like this little bit of a pullback. There was a backlash. And, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I hate to be so negative. But I think it's wonderful that so many amazing artists are being seen. And I think it's wonderful that they're making some money. I think it's wonderful that they're making some money and they're giving money back. That there's residencies, and that there's all of these amazing spaces that kids can go to, and so I think it's a powerful time. How about yourself? What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I think it is. I just hope it lasts more than 10 minutes.
Yeah. See, you're like me.
Yeah. I hope it lasts
downers.
more. But we've definitely made some progress.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen, in a few years?
I know I always think
Yeah,
of like the
that's-
Bill Robinson anthem,
exactly.
you know, 3 steps up, 2 steps back,
Right,
3 steps
right.
back, you know, just kind of like that tap dance.
I feel the same way. I mean, I feel very fortunate, and I'm one of the lucky ones. But I think about others.
Yeah.
Because there's still those out there that, I mean, I remember we couldn't have ever been in here, Alison. No way could we have been on. I mean, I showed across the street at Anglem when Paula had a gallery across the street, but no way would we been up here. And Christie's, yay, thank you. I mean, that's a real deal. That's a real deal. But it shows you, yes, we have progressed, but it takes all of us to continuously talk about it. I don't know if you guys know Travis, who's standing back there. He's like an incredible artist.
Hey.
Yeah.
The tab on.
He could tell you some stories. Anyway, we have made progress.
Good.
We have made progress, but we have a long way to go.
So a month ago when this show opened up, and I'll finish with this, we were here and a man came to me, was at the show, Paul. Is it Paul here?
Paul,
Where are you?
there he is.
Where is he? Well, why don't you hear? Instead of my telling them what you told me at dinner, do you remember what you said about this exhibition? Here, come up here a sec. Come a little closer. And...
I'm really shy.
Not at all.
Hi there.
I'm not really shy.
You bet. Do you remember what you said at dinner?
I do. I was talking about the significance of this collection, but I was also talking about the significance of artists like this. I'm a 4th generation San Franciscan. That basically makes me a unicorn. But what I was talking about was I'm super highly educated, real smart, lots of degrees. But the challenge that I had growing up is something that I think is common and frequent, and it's not being able to see images of art, and I love art, but I never saw images that looked like me, that looked like my community. And growing up, having to work that much harder just to see images, occasionally I would see something in a book maybe, but my experience when I went to the movies, my experience when I went to a gallery, which I didn't do frequently, but I had done. More importantly, the experience that I had even at a field trip when I would go to the museum, there might be a picture on the 3rd floor around the left hallway where there would be someone that looked like me next to the elevator. And invariably, it was a slave portrait or it was an image of African Americans in a stereotypical presentation, playing basketball or playing jazz. But it was all that I had. And I was surprised growing up at how hard I had to work to look to find images of me, but then beyond that, to look to find images that reflected my own self-perception about who I am or whom I thought my community was. And so today, when I walk into a gallery like Christie's and I'm surrounded by literally the rock star artists that are on these walls and the rock star artists that have been brought together here in front of us for me to literally touch and look at, that I've seen.
Are we rock stars?
I'm just saying. This is my experience. I'm just telling you.
Sweet.
It's moving to me in ways that's hard to articulate because it's almost overwhelming to be in a space like this and have access to art like this beyond just the Google, where I have to hunt and find things so that when a collection like this is brought together and when a collection like this is presented, I'm in awe and of appreciation, not just for what you've collected and shared, but what Christie's has put together and opened up to the public and institutionalized a practice for folks like you and I to come in and to ask the question of, are we going to be represented? And to ask the question of who will be seen Because if we don't value it as the consumers, if we don't value it as the appreciators, it's hard for the institutions to value it, to put it on their walls, and to make it available to us. And so I thank you just for having me come again. I told all my friends and acted like it's the first time, like, oh, come meet me here. Like I haven't been here. I haven't looked at all this stuff because I want other people to have an experience that's similar to mine, and it doesn't mean that you have to look like me. It doesn't mean that you have to have my experience, but it does mean that maybe for the first time, or for a second or third time, you will come in and have the experience that I have of looking at these images and seeing reflections of how I see myself, or see the reflection of how I see my community in different ways that's appreciative. And so, thank you for asking me. That was a long answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. So with that, I usually judge my audiences by the squirm factor, and you all have been wonderful. You haven't moved around at all, but let's quit
No
while we're ahead
questions.
here. And really, to both of you, this has just been a joy. You know, we probably collect more work of artists of color than anyone in the country. There are others, I'm sure, spend more, but because we buy lots of paintings, sculptures, Kinder Wiley things, but lots of prints and multiples. And we've had both your work. We have your work touring to the 5th or 6th museum. We've had your work in now 6 or 8 museums. Kara Walker right now started again at the Frisk Museum in Nashville. It's at the Cincinnati Art Museum, goes to 6 more places. We had it tour 12, 14 years ago for 6 years to 8 museums. For instance, I had her show go to Boise, Laramie, Wyoming, Springfield, Missouri, really white places where we funded symposiums and black, white, all sorts of things. We'd find leaders of both those communities and whatever. And I haven't collected this art because you're women or because you're black or because anything else. It's because it's great work. And the themes that are in this work, in your work, are universal themes, and they touch all of us. It helps understand your story, your legacy, your history, and our histories and our legacies. And what's so wonderful is that your work is both you, just constantly inspiring. Always look at them and see new things, and you can't walk away without being grabbed in some ways. I could go on for an hour about these in terms of my cockamamie themes that are unique and good for me. But thank you both so much, and thanks for sharing tonight the stories and the words of wisdom and your experiences. It just means a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.